actually here. We're not on a Zoom. We can see each other. We can talk to each other. We can touch each other. It's just monumental to me, because I was kept in for 16 months and it wasn't very nice. And any of you, if you were the same, you will realise what a joy it is to be out and about and amongst people. So I think we should be very happy we're all here today. Okay, and I know how hard life must have been for a lot of the carers throughout that pandemic. It was scary for all of us, but I'm sure it was multiplied up by I don't know how many times for you people who are caring. I don't know how you coped. You all did very well, and we did our very best to help you.
This report, which is put together, and it's difficult to kind of hold it and hold the microphone at the same time, but it's a beautifully coloured report that traces the story of the 12 months journey of Bolton Carers Support and of you who are carers. It's your story. And it tracks those headlines that we were so all aware of. What could we do? What couldn't we do? What would have to change? Well, this report picks up on those headlines. For me, as I read it, it reminds me of those days. And it tells of the changes that had to happen in your life and also clearly in the life of Bolton Carers Support. And it tracks the changes that were made that kept you connected, that kept Bolton Carers Support changing in order to meet your needs as carers through those months. So it's an incredible journey to read, and I recommend it to you because it demonstrates an organisation, Bolton Carers Support, that reacted so quickly, so innovatively at a time of crisis, when business as normal had to change overnight, and things had to be different, and ways had to be found that nobody had discovered before. As you read this report, you realise that story of how changes came about. For me, it's really heart-touching, because within the report, your voice as carers is clearly heard. The recognition that for you, of all people, those pandemic months, and perhaps even still continue to be the toughest of circumstances, the hardest of situations, and your voice is clearly heard in this report.
I met the love of my life at Dawn Grammar School in 1959. She was 15 and I was 16. We love the mountains, and we've done many mountains all over the world. And every year we went to Slovenia to walk in the Julian Alps. On our return from Bolton, Barbara did not feel well, which was a rare occurrence. Eventually, after many false dawns, including losing her, she had the op, which was a repair and a double bypass. And then the tremor appeared. And for about 12 months, nobody would diagnose the Parkinson's or the dementia. But it was a cardiologist in Bolton who recognised and detected Parkinson's. And in her words, which I always remember, was, "Your plumbing's working, Barbara, but it's the bloody Parkinson's." And thereon, it was a steady trail across many specialities: neurology, memory team, Parkinson's, nurses, and so it goes on. The last 2 to 3 years have been particularly difficult, and COVID did cause me a lot of problems. Because Barbara had complex needs, I did all the phone consultations with the speaker on so she could hear me. Reviewing medicines daily, and sadly, because of the specialities you're on, they weren't all singing from the same hymn sheet. On the 11th of October last year, Barbara was admitted to Bolton Royal Infirmary by an ambulance. And she was then moved to Greenway, Trafford, on the 4th of December last year. Because of the COVID, I did not see her until Christmas Day, and shocked at how she deteriorated. When they got her as far as she could, she was transferred to Birchwood House in Bury. Sadly, she's there with one-to-one. We couldn't see the home because that wasn't the case. Although my wife and I were so opposite, she was happy in her own company and family, but I need people. I've been very, very active with refugees and asylum seekers for many years, and something that I value very deeply is that they put their trust in me, and they do not trust their governments or authorities in their previous country or ours. Barbara survived COVID, but I succumbed to it in June this year. Barbara sectioned under mental health this year and the deprivation of liberty. All this is very raw to read, but Barbara's now in a safe place, and most of the time she doesn't know. It will be her worst nightmare to be in a home. My big mistake was keeping her at home too long. I think care and arrogance played a big part there. I don't know when I met Lauren. I think it's about 18 months ago. I think it was a sheer cry of help. It's lonely being a carer, especially with COVID, because friends don't know what to say to you. Over the last 12 months, he has been fantastic in his support for me. He has the fantastic ability to judge my mood. His weekly chats are looked forward to and are very diverse. He can talk about anything from gardening, football, walking. Two things we leave out are religion and politics. I would love to have his skill. I'm normally a bottle half full person, but this last 2 years have tested me. People do not know what to say to me. God had been my rock all of these years. And our two sons said many years ago, Rome wasn't built in a day, but with our mum, it would have been. I miss her desperately. One person can't change the world, but one person can change your world. Thank you, Lauren.
So today, I've got something very special. I'm going to be teaching you all how to repot a plant. Is everyone excited? Yes. Oh, don't lie. Okay, so do we have any avid gardeners in the audience at all? Oh, one? Fantastic. So if I'm doing anything wrong, please don't say anything. Just keep it stuck. Okay. So plants, I personally feel, are the most important things in the world. I'm a bit of an eco-friendly person. I love plants, I love trees, that sort of thing. I draw the line at hugging trees, but you know, it's all there all the same. Now, this plant needs repotting. Plants are very important to help us breathe and to help us just sort through our lives on a daily basis. I'm sure everyone during the pandemic at some point took a walk through the park and it helped us all calm down. If we didn't have them in our lives, everything would cease to exist. If we didn't have trees and plants, life itself would be like a barren wasteland and nothing would be left to us. We wouldn't exist. So this plant I bought about a year ago. It was really a lot smaller. I think it was probably about this size. I don't know if you can all see that. But it was really tiny when I bought it. But with proper care and attention and feeding, it's grown to a much bigger size. But now it needs a bigger pot because it needs room to grow. Now when you look at this plant, what do you see? Anybody? No silly answers, it's alright. Okay, so when I look at this plant, it kind of reminds me of BCS, and I'll tell you why. Because this plant is something that has brought me a lot of comfort during lockdown, which is probably strange for a plant, I know, but bear with me. It was something that I could look at every day, and it was something that I knew I'd looked after and I'd cultivated. Now, what do you see with BCS? Much like a plant, they have a lot of fruit on their trees. Yeah? Like a plant, it's got a lot of fruit and a lot of leaves. And so, a few of those leaves are things that are very important. For example, you've not got it. Peter, you disappoint me. It's alright, I'll let you off. So, the things, if you can imagine this plant is BCS, imagine its leaves are the things that it offers. The helpline. Has anybody else here used the helpline at some point or another? Yeah? So that helpline is for people who don't know where to start when they're trying to get caring needs. Things such as information and advice on what they can do to help themselves and help the people that they care for. Stuff such as emotional support. As we've heard today, there's been many people who needed support over the pandemic because they felt isolated. They felt upset or felt like things were too overwhelming for them. There's also things such as training. Training such as learning how to care for people, to stuff that's a little bit more fun, like pottery classes or even knitting and things like that. I heard there's a knit and natter. Is that true, knit and natter?
Have you been doing that, Peter? I don't know. Similar, all kinds of creative things.
Creative training and things like that, just to help people sort of let loose and to let go of their everyday troubles. There's also things such as respite breaks. Every carer needs a respite break. I'm sure everyone's taken advantage of that. We also have things such as benefits advice. These things, like benefits advice, is to help people to ensure that they're getting the right sort of benefits and the right sort of advice that comes to it, so that they know exactly where to go and who to speak to and make sure they get to the right people. We also have outreach and telephone befriending. I personally think telephone befriending was really important to a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, because a lot of people felt isolated, whether they lived on their own or whether they were living with other family members. But as main carers for someone, they needed someone to speak to, and it can be incredibly lonely. And we also talked about support groups as well. So all these different leaves all represent the different things that Bolton Carer Support gives us. Now, let's have a look at what else we have. So let's start filling our pot, shall we? Because when you're growing your plant, you need a lot more room to ensure the roots are fully looked after. And what really matters is how we maintain and grow that plant and make sure it gets bigger and better and more beautiful through time. So, how do we do that? How do we look after the roots? Well, let's give this a little pull. Oh my gosh, look at that, guys. Can you see all them roots? Those roots are doing all the unseen work. They're making sure that this plant grows healthy, it grows big and beautiful. So all the work that Bolton Carer Support does on the top shows us these beautiful, lovely, lush green leaves. But what about these guys here? These absolutely packed and gorgeous roots. These are the things as well that we don't see, that is doing so much work to help these leaves grow. Let's just pop that in there. So I've got a lot of plants at home, and believe it or not, I've got too many. Lots of people bought pelotons and pets during the pandemic. I bought plants. I know. Now, I don't know if you know this about trees, but they're incredibly social creatures. And I say creatures because they are living things. Did you know trees in a forest will know when another tree is sick and needs help? Did anyone know that? Yeah. What it'll do, all their roots connect to each other. And if one tree is sick, all the other trees will sell nutrients and help to ensure that tree doesn't die, starve, or come under any other threat. They all look after each other. That's exactly what Bolton Carer Support does. They are the root system that helps to ensure that all these leaves are healthy and beautiful, and they provide help to other trees that need help as well. So, Bolton Carer Support do a lot of listening and a lot of helping. But there are a lot of things that maybe don't go seen, that you don't see happen on every single daily basis as much as you see these leaves. So for example, partnership working. They've worked with different partners across Bolton to ensure every single carer gets the help that they need. They promote carers' issues, as we spoke about before, making sure that your voice is heard. They also do strategic borough-wide involvement. That's making sure that everyone around Bolton who can help does help. Trying to get people involved very successfully, I might add. And there's also making sure that the link between carers and statutory organisations aren't only made, but they grow stronger, much like the roots. There's also fundraising. I think, in my opinion, the soil is much like the fundraising. We need to repot this plant because its roots need to get bigger. It needs to get more beautiful. And the soil, which is fantastic at making sure that this plant gets all the nutrients, or shall we say funding, that it needs to be replenished. There's a lot of things that go on with fundraising. I'm sure you have a few stories, don't you, Georgia?
Alison may do.
Really? Do you want to tell us some? No, I don't want to speak to you, she says. But the thing is, what's important about the soil, also known as the fundraising in this case, is that it keeps getting replenished. It keeps getting what it needs. You can't just pot a plant and just hope for the best. You've got to ensure every so often it gets a little bit of extra because it needs those nutrients, not only to maintain what it's doing, but it also needs those nutrients to ensure it can get bigger and better. Because when you plant this, when you plant more soil, or continue with the planting of the soil, continue with the funding, all you're going to see is a much more beautiful, a much more bigger plant, and it will bring so much joy and fulfillment to you and to everyone around it. Just think, the funding, working with partners, the local council involvement, promoting what carers need and giving them a voice, all goes into this soil to make the organisation grow. So, how'd you like them apples?
Fairness though, we did enjoy the online quizzes and the online services make the best of a bad situation. I think they're super. and the Dementia Society, Bolton Dementia Society. If it hadn't been for those two methods of support, I think I would have taught myself long ago, to be honest.
Yes, the Bolton people, the support's been very good to us.